Jack Ma is one of the wealthiest men in the world, and in this video we're going to be talking about his life purpose as seen through the lines on his hands. We'll talk about his difficulties in his childhood, what saved him from those difficulties. We'll also look at his career, his strengths and weaknesses as a businessman, and also make predictions about his future. All of that's coming up. Okay, so Jack Ma is the founder of Alibaba, one of the biggest e-commerce websites in the world right now. So when you look at his hands, you'd expect to see somebody like the Chinese version of Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos. But his hand's actually very different. What I want you guys to focus on is his lifeline in the early part of his life. You see all the wrinkles over here? And also the islands and crosses on his lifeline. This is a sign of someone who had a lot of confidence problems when he was a child. And we'll talk about the source of those confidence problems in just a little while when we talk about where his future's heading. But this guy had a lot of personal development issues and he really didn't believe in himself until his mid to late 20s. The interesting thing with that is if we look at his pinky finger, we'll notice it's relatively long. That's a sign of somebody with really good communication skills. So someone who's too shy to communicate was given the gift of communication. That's one of the ironies of life, you see. You can be born with some really good talents, but if you don't have the confidence or self-belief to utilize those talents, then you're really not going to be going anywhere in life. And in Jack Ma's case, he would have lived a very average life if not for this indication here on his thumb. This is the Yav symbol, which is a sign of success coming through your spouse. So in other words, Jack Ma's success actually came after he got married at the age of 24. We can see the lifeline after that point is actually pretty thick and very strong. So the first 22 years of his life were a complete struggle. Then he meets and marries his wife and his life gets better and better from there on out. So you know that saying that behind every successful man is an incredible woman? That's especially the case in this guy's life. But I want to talk also about his career line over here, which is the Saturn line that runs up down the center of the hand. You see how it goes really strong and then it stops at this point? Then there's another line that starts up over here, and then that line stops when it crosses a headline. What's going on over here is that Jack Ma would have had a major career change happening at about the age of 29. That's when the first line stops. And then he would have had another career change happening at about the age of 35. Which is where the second line stops. And what happened in this guy's life was 35 is the age at which he actually founded Alibaba. That was the business that created tremendous success for him. And that's the reason that we know of him today. But what's interesting is that you don't see thick and prominent Saturn lines after the headline. Instead, what you do see is a very thick business line. That goes all the way up to his heart line. Meaning from the age of 35 up until about the age of 56, where the business line touches a heart line, this guy would have been all obsessed with his business. That's really what happened. Alibaba went from a small regional company to a global powerhouse. And what's even more interesting is that that business line doesn't continue past the heart line. Instead, we get a success line starting up. And so what that tells us is that the most successful period of his life will be after the age of 56. So this isn't a guy who cares about money. He doesn't care about business so much, even though he dedicated decades of his life to it. He cares about success and being seen as successful. And even more interestingly, he resigned from the board of Alibaba at the age of 56. He wanted to pursue philanthropy and education and that type of thing. And what that means is that the Alibaba company will actually perform better financially without him leading the company. And I'm sure that knowledge has got to be bruising his ego because it's a lot like Bill Gates in the sense that Microsoft really started succeeding after Bill Gates left the company. Similar thing with Jack Ma and Alibaba. So the question then is, where is his future? And remember we were talking about his marriage being the thing that saved him? What I want you to have a look at is under the pinky finger, this is his marriage line. But on top of it, we have a second relationship. And that line is very thick and very long. And it actually cuts right into the sun line. And what that means is that this guy is going to have a sex scandal at some point in the future. Either he's got a mistress and that comes out, or he gets into some funny business that gets him in trouble. That's in the future, so we got to keep an eye on that. But coming back to the karmic energy, if it's his wife that supported his success his whole life, his life purpose more or less in the future is to make sure he doesn't ruin his marriage. If I could go back to his childhood and talk about this, if we look at this line over here, that's a line for his mother. We see how long and prominent it is. Most people don't have a line for their mother that's that prominent. What this means is that this guy really had a difficult relationship with his mum. Either she was overbearing and that lowered his confidence when he was younger, or he was very, very close to her, so close in fact that he couldn't be independent on his own. And that in turn lowered his confidence. In either case, his mission is to overcome his childhood trauma with his mother. And he did that through marrying what I'm reading on his hands as an incredible woman. There is a potential that he could blow that good stuff here in the future. So we'll come back and have a look at what happens to this guy in the future at some point, but I also want to be having a look at his lifeline, because you see how there's this really big island at the end of it. What that means is that this is a guy who's unsure what to do with his life. And just as a business line cuts through the island on the lifeline, that means that he's going to have a major health problem involving his stomach between the age of 60 to 62. Not sure the exact age, because that line actually cuts the lifeline at two separate points there. But in his early 60s, there's going to be a serious stomach problem for him, health-wise, and then he's got to face this marriage problem that I think he's about to create. And in this sense, his hands remind me a lot of Kanye West. I actually made a video on that guy's hands, and I told him that his key purpose in life is not to blow his marriage, which, since the time of making that video, he actually has done. So if you guys want to learn about Kanye West, a fellow billionaire with similar karma to Jack Ma, click on this video over here. Thanks a lot, guys.